Thanks, Gianpaolo. I'm Alison Beveridge, and I am an in-house general counsel. I am about 16 years qualified, and I started my career in a very traditional way, doing law at
Mhm.
university, doing the LPC in London, and then moving on to a big law firm, Baker McKenzie, to do my training contract. And it really sort of gave me a very good start and good founding in my legal career. I knew very early on that I wanted to be an in-house lawyer. I think
Mhm.
I loved brands. I loved business. It all seemed quite exciting and sexy at the time, and it
Mhm.
still is in some ways. I became an IP lawyer because I was very interested in that field, and worked for a number of years in private practice. And then I actually fell into the in-house profession a bit earlier than I'd planned,
Mhm.
actually. Back in my day, we were always told that you should only go in-house at a certain stage in your career and not
Mhm.
when you're very, very junior, although I think times have changed. I was fortunate enough to be asked to move into the De Beers Group
Mhm.
by a former colleague and friend of mine. And so I thought, great, let's do it. And in I went. And I absolutely loved being in-house. And from then, to cut a long story short, I've worked in various businesses from the De Beers Group to Intercontinental Hotels Group and hospitality. I've worked for both big FTSE companies and smaller scale-up businesses. And that sort of took me all the way to my most recent career, being the general counsel of Ted Baker. So I've ended up in retail, which frankly is a brilliant industry to be in.
Mhm. And was it always the plan to go into law, or did you sort of, fall into it somehow, or did you do a degree before? How did that happen?
Uh, if I'm being really honest, I've always wanted to do law, which sounds really boring. I remember watching a program called Ali McBeal when I was about
I used to love
11.
that.
I
Used to love
thought
that
that looked,
program.
yeah, I thought that looks brilliant. That looks glamorous. Look at what they're wearing, and I thought that's me. That's what I want to be.
Mm.
So actually, through my teen years and through my university years, I just thought I really, really want to be a lawyer. So unfortunately,
Mm.
never had that career shift or epiphany moment.
Mhm.
But actually, what I've realized is that a legal career can be absolutely anything you want it to be.
Mhm.
It can be really varied, and it's not necessarily what I thought of when I originally thought I
Mm.
wanted to be a lawyer. So it's ended up very different.
Mm. Did you have a sphere of influence or mentors or anyone in your sort of circles that sort of, helped you sort of make that judgment, law is what I want to do, or was it really just Ali McBeal?
Well, I came from quite a traditional family where, to be honest, it was generally encouraged that you would do, one of the proper professions, whatever that might be, medicine or law or accountancy,
Mm.
really. But I, always had support from my family. I didn't have any lawyers in the family, but
Mhm.
I always had support to go, fortunate to go all the way through university and to do the LPC with support from my family.
Mm. Do you ever have a fork in the road where maybe you consider something different, like medicine, for example, or was it very much early on you knew law was the one?
Well, do you know what? I actually really, really love food.
Mm.
There was a moment in my career where I had been made redundant,
Mhm.
and I had a period of leave where I really had time to reflect and also, a lump sum of money, which I wanted to do something productive with. So I actually went and did a professional chef qualification
Oh, nice.
during that time, which was really a bucket list thing for me. When you go
Mhm.
into law, it tends to be all consuming, and it was very difficult back then to have time for anything else. So
Mhm.
actually having a break for me was really great. And whilst it wasn't a fork in the road, it just gave me a more rounded perspective on potentially other options, something I could
Mm.
do when I was retired, maybe. But I'm glad that I've been on the path that I've been on.
Mm. And you're in, I guess, a really sort of good sort of position to now have the experience on both sides of the fence, with regards to private practice and in-house. What would you say is the biggest differences from the roles?
I would say that being in-house makes you feel really, really connected to business, to
Mhm.
people. And for me to having worked in consumer facing businesses, it feels very relevant to life, to my life, to those
Mm.
around me. You work very, very closely with people, junior to senior, creative to finance, and you really, from a very junior stage, you have a seat at the table, and you really feel that you do,
Mm,
and you feel that your voice is heard. And for me, that has meant that my development has been a lot quicker than I expected it to be
mhm,
in terms of developing experience around commercial law, around strategy, around team management and leadership.
mm,
So it is definitely a very, very different profession. Obviously, neither is right or wrong, but
mm,
I personally enjoy that sense of feeling creative, actually. So for example, if you work in a consumer-facing industry, you might be dealing with designers and artists, and then you might the next day be dealing with the tax team. You might be then dealing with the executive team, and then you'll be dealing with digital people or people that work in the warehouse. It's really very varied.
mm. And if you look back on your career, what did success look like for you as, Alison, the trainee lawyer who, is working in private practice, to now how success looks for you in your career now?
I think success when I was in private practice very much meant moving up the years of qualification, and
Mm,
the salary that comes with that. And you're very much chasing the next job title. When you go in-house, frankly, the structure is often pretty flat.
mhm,
You're given responsibility, as I said, even when you're a junior lawyer. So success for me then meant being able to expand my horizons,
mhm,
being able to be involved in every part of the business. And that was definitely the case from as soon as I went in-house to now. And I think now, having reached the general counsel level where there isn't necessarily another job title to chase,
mhm,
y- success for me is defined by working with brilliant people and continuing to learn from brilliant people, which I am definitely doing, and also from facing new challenges every day, which actually you definitely do as an in-house
mm,
lawyer, um, and also adding value because in-house teams are very small, but they are also often the most expensive team or one of the most
mm,
expensive teams within a business. And you really, really have to be adding value every day. And I got told by someone recently, a much more experienced Ned, actually, he said to me, you know, the minute you're not adding value, you just shouldn't be there. You should
mm,
be out. So make sure that you're doing that every day. So
mm.
I think, yeah, it's something I try to aspire to.
That's great advice. Um, I guess this one's a little bit of a joke question, but have you ever had a relative ask you to get them out of a parking ticket?
Yeah, I do actually. I feel that people probably, my mum probably thinks I either will write wills or I can, yeah, challenge parking tickets or maybe get her a refund on something. So definitely. But you know what? I think being a lawyer, you realize
Mm,
that you're actually you're pretty good at crafting a persuasive
yeah.
email or having a persuasive
Mm,
conversation. So yeah, I think I probably have helped people do that.
mm. And with regards to, legal in a company, one of the sort of traditional sort of outlooks of legal in a company has been legal sits in the ivory tower and they're very unapproachable. How do you build that sort of reputation of legal being an approachable department in a business where, if someone in a sales team or someone, in a different department maybe has a legal issue and they're a bit scared to sort of say that they messed up, how do you build that sort of approachability? Is it, FaceTime? What is it? How would you go about it?
It's definitely relationships. I know that everyone will say that probably in every job, but definitely being in-house legal, it is
Mm,
all about the relationships you have. And that is having FaceTime, is being approachable and available. And it's also just being a real person.
mhm,
People think of lawyers as, I don't know, stuffy or
mm,
overly academic. And I think that good in-house lawyers are just, frankly, normal people like everyone else in all the teams. And being curious, I think, is very important. Teams are really proud of what they do, and they want someone who is genuinely curious and interested in how their function works, in the work that they're doing, and to feel understood. And I think once you can do that with people,
Mhm.
your own legal brain will figure out the rest. So you'll figure out what their problems are, what their risks are, and how to fix it without them even coming to
Mhm.
you a lot of the time.
Yeah, so I mean, from my story, so I done about 4 years as a paralegal, in-house. So I worked at a big Fortune 150 business, and I also worked at a smaller business, and the differences were quite dramatic in the sense of, for the smaller business, legal, everyone knew who we were. In the large business, nobody knew who we were, and we didn't have much face time. I didn't know anyone else really in the business outside of legal, so it's quite interesting just that dynamic change. And I feel that, if it's a general counsel and it's their first few weeks in a role, getting that face time is so important to make yourself a person that they can come to with issues, because people will naturally hide things that when they've messed up. And I think there's not, being approachable as a legal team in house will help a lot. um
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it depends, to be honest, if you're in a big or small businesses. For example, I know in very big businesses, they have to have a legal inbox. Whereas in the businesses I've been in, they've been a lot leaner. And I've always said, there is no way I'll have a legal inbox. I don't want
mm,
people to email, a faceless inbox. I want people
mm,
to email me or my team, or physically come to me.
mm.
So I think it does depend on the structure of your own company.
No, absolutely. And I guess just to sort of, um, go back in your career a little bit, do you have anyone who was a really strong mentor, or maybe a GC that you worked under, who you really felt, gave you that confidence to move into that GC role, or give you that confidence early on to really be a good lawyer?
Definitely. I can think of a few individuals, previous bosses or team leaders of mine. I remember once my head of team saying to me when I was much more junior,
Mm,
he said to me, Alison, just go and be brilliant. That's
mm,
all he said. He said, I don't really care what you do. You don't have to ask my permission to do anything. Just go and be brilliant and do it. And for me, that was very liberating. And I think once you give people the freedom
mm,
to achieve their own potential, then that is very inspiring in itself. But once you're kept in a box, or you're told you can only do a
mm,
list of 20 different things, that's when it's very hard to achieve in your career. So I had very good people. I also had bosses who really believed in me, who championed me, and actually who, stood up for me when I was more junior. And actually, those relationships have really carried through. I have one particular boss who then is the person that brought me into Ted Baker,
mm,
and then and really opened those doors for me, which I'm really grateful.
mm. And I guess that's really important from my side as well, because when I was at law school, we were doing the LPC part time, and I was working. I had a really good friend of mine on the course, and he was working in house as a paralegal as well. And that sort of mentor is so vital, but it can also break you as well. And what I mean by that is, one GC said to him that he would never be a lawyer. He wasn't good enough, and he should look at other professions. He is now a lawyer, but that I remember just telling him to don't listen to their advice. You can really flourish if you put your mind to it. Don't always take the advice of someone, because they don't know everything at the end of the day. And that was just one of the stories that I think it's important, if you do become a mentor and you do move into a sort of general counsel role, is that you do offer support and I guess mentoring to more junior people, because he could have left the career at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would say to that is that it's about finding the role that suits you,
Mm,
not the role that other people think you'd be great at. Because I have, in my career, I've actually moved around to different companies, quite a few different companies, as opposed to sat in the same one for 20 years. And I definitely feel I've had varying levels of success within each of those roles.
mm,
And that's purely by finding the role and the business and the people that suit you, that bring the best out of you.
mm,
And that might not be the biggest company, It might not be the highest paying role, but it's the place that you're going to thrive.
Mm,
And as a mentor to my team, I will always say to them, think about what you want, and then my role really is to help you find out a way to get there.
mm. And what would you say is a really important skill or skill set for an in-house lawyer to really thrive? That could be anything from stakeholder management or, something along that really sort of helps lawyers, maybe move away from being too corporate, from, coming from a very, top end private practice firm to being more relatable to maybe a local sales team or, someone else in the business. What do you think is important in that sort of skill set?
From a really basic level, I would say the ability to listen.
Mm,
Um, Lawyers typically, I don't know if you find this, lawyers typically like to talk a lot.
mhm,
Um, I think, to be honest, what makes a really good lawyer, particularly in-house lawyer, is the ability to listen.
mm,
You know, people come to you with problems, but you listen to what's going on through the whole business. And your skill, really, and particularly in a GC role, is the ability to pull together all the different strands from the business when it really matters. So you've spent your time then listening to what the issues in the commercial team, what are the issues in the digital team, what are the issues in finance and tax. And then when it really matters actually is when, as a GC, you're sitting in the boardroom
mm,
and an issue arises and you're able to pull together those strands throughout the business because there isn't representation from all those different teams within the boardroom. Really, it's you and a
mm,
handful of others. And so it's the ability to join the dots, but you can only join the dots if you've actually listened to what's being said.
mm. And have you ever experienced, maybe in your first general counsel role, imposter syndrome in your career, where you've moved up in the ranks and you're like, oh God, I'm a general counsel now. Those first few weeks or anything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, if I was being really honest, Gianpaolo, I feel that every single day about not just work, but life, to be honest. Um, in my career, actually, and particularly in the GC world, I have sort of fallen. I've never kind of pushed and pushed for the GC role. Actually,
Mm,
it came about that the current GC left the business and I stepped up into the role. I was asked to step up into the role.
mhm,
In my most recent role, I was the GC at Harland and Wolff PLC, and that was because I was asked to go there after finishing at Ted Baker, and so actually I was asked to move on. And so actually, I think that you have the imposter syndrome, but you have people around you that really believe in you, and that makes a huge difference. And
mm,
also, you get over imposter syndrome by simply doing the job,
mm,
just not listening to all those worries and fears, and you do the job, and actually you realize you can, and you can do it well.
mm. Um, did they not leave a plaque for you or something? I remember seeing something on LinkedIn.
The lovely team at Belfast, Holland and Wolf, they made a really nice plaque for me to thank me for the work I'd done for them. And yeah,
Mm,
it's moments like that when I go back to what I said about adding value to
mm.
people as well as businesses. And yeah, that was really special actually.
It shows that you made an impact for them to go through all that effort. So yeah.
Yeah, it
Um,
was really nice.
I guess to move on to this sort of next part, with regards to legacy influence, if you had 5 minutes with a younger self, maybe in your early 20s, with regards to the experience that you have now, looking back, what advice would you give that younger Alison?
Um, I would say follow your gut.
Mm,
When I was in my 20s, I mean, there was definitely less access to information that people have now, but there's a lot of you should do this, and then you should follow that path, and then you should have this kind of job.
mm,
And actually, what I've done through my career is I've gone with my gut. And whilst sometimes it hasn't worked out the way I thought it would, it has
mm,
always added something really great.
mm,
Personally. And so far that that tack has worked. You go with your gut, including when it comes to career choices,
mm,
and it usually works out fine.
No, absolutely. Um, And with regards to leadership, and I think that's a really strong point on what a general counsel does, especially with their team, and also with in regards to in board meetings, etc., showing that sort of leadership in the business. Is that something that you sort of pick up on the way? Is it something you feel that you're born with, or is it something that sort of comes with time, with confidence or in your ability?
I think it's definitely something you pick up on the way because all of us have a boss or we've had a
Mm,
boss's boss. I think you observe the good, the bad, and the ugly as you go through your career. You observe, people you aspire to be and people who you don't aspire to be.
mm,
And then the most important thing actually is to embrace your own style of leadership. And I think
mm,
I definitely feel that, I've observed boardrooms whether male, female, international. And I think that's, you've got to embrace who you are and what your style of leadership is. And I think that my style definitely is that, I listen. I don't think that you need to talk the most in a boardroom to be a leader, to be honest. I
mm,
think just what you say has to be impactful. And also in terms of leading a team, I just sort of don't think there's a magic formula and you can't overthink it. I always think, how would I like to be led or
mm.
mentored? And well, that's the way I would treat other people.
No, that's very, very good advice. I guess with regards to sort of new technology moving into the sort of legal space, what's your sort of viewpoint on AI and the integration in-house legal teams over the next sort of few years? We've already seen some of it, but I guess do you envision it's going to play a big part in sort of taking those sort of mundane sort of basic tasks away from the legal team to allow them to be more efficient, or do you feel that it might replace certain aspects of what a lawyer does?
I mean, absolutely, it's going to play a huge part in the legal function. I think lawyers in general are a little bit risk averse. We like to sit
Mm,
back and see what everyone else is doing first. And certainly for the last year or so, that's definitely what legal teams have been doing. I've seen firsthand what happens when businesses don't innovate quickly enough and they're quite antiquated still in their practices, and it really does slow things down. So I think it's really important that legal does embrace AI. There's a lot of choice out there at the moment, and to be honest, I'm still learning. I'm still learning what's best and what's going to work best. Again,
mm,
it depends on the business. But it definitely, absolutely will replace a lot of the mundane tasks, the template drafting and the checking of contracts, contract filing, etc. And so I think as legal teams, particularly in house, we need to think of how we are, again, going back to that, adding value. I think that legal teams add value in that pulling together of strands on the strategic part of things, but also can add commercial value to teams. So we're not strictly people that just churn out legal
mm.
regulations, for example. And so I think all of us lawyers are now thinking about that part of it.
No. I think with regards to I guess legal service alternatives. Traditionally, when in-house teams have had, I guess bandwidth issues or overspill on legal work, outsourcing it to a law firm has been the sort of traditional approach. And what we've seen there is, it being very expensive, first of all. And over the last few years, we've definitely seen a rise in sort of fractional general counsels and legal alternative services for, NDA services, etc. Do you envision that to be a growing market? Because from my side, I've seen it to really expand, especially on the fractional general
Yeah.
counsel side
Mhm.
over the last sort of 2 years. Do you envision that to be a massive growth sort of industry over the next sort of 5 years? And is it a service, if you were general counsel, that you would use?
Yes, so absolutely I do because actually, particularly having worked for businesses with very small budgets or small teams, it's giving them the flexibility to be able to, have the resource they need when they need it. Because as you know, headcount is expensive and it's also
Mm,
really, really difficult to hire the right people.
mm,
I think it's great. Yes, I've definitely explored using it for my teams in the past. I think that's, you know, law firms are really revolutionizing the way that they offer service now, and they're recognizing that businesses can't necessarily afford
Mm.
what they used to be able to, but still need the support. And also, I think it's great for small businesses now that everyone hopefully can afford some form of legal support, whatever that
Mm.
might look like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really feel that having that alternative, a lot of it is budget driven. With I guess especially the economy at the moment, a lot of
Yeah,
companies are being a lot more conscious of what they're spending money on, and outsourcing work and etc. to law firms has become expensive, and it's become I guess a sort of pain point for in-house legal teams. And we've definitely seen, new services, coming to the market, and I get approached about them all the time.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's not a bad thing, because what it does is it makes the legal, I guess the legal services industry more competitive, with those alternatives for pricing. So it's, yeah, definitely a positive thing.
Yeah.
Um, on the sort of quick fire questions, which is the next part of the podcast, I guess the first one would be, what would be the sort of, one word that describes you now in your career?
Resilient.
Design. I like it. And the best legal tool that you can't live without, or it can be even
Um,
tools.
well, it's an oldie but a goodie, but I would say practical law. I think it's great.
Practical. Yeah. For me, it's been DocuSign. It's been a game changer
Oh, yeah,
for,
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
for us. It's just sped things up so much. It's taken away that whole manual printing out a contract and having it signed. So yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a game changer. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Tea. I'm coffee personally. Probably too addicted to the coffee side. Um, favorite way to switch off after work, after having a really busy day?
Play the piano.
The piano. Good skill set. I assume you learned that as a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people who don't do it. Um, okay. Something that might surprise people about yourself, who know you.
Um,
Could be stamp collection.
Last Christmas, my family and I were the face of Sainsbury's Christmas pajamas.
No way, really. Is if I Google that, am I going to
Yes,
find
so
that?
you'll see hundreds of pictures of us in Christmas pajamas.
That's
Websites, it was all over stores, everything.
that's fantastic. How did you end up getting approached for that?
Just randomly through our children, who also do a bit of modeling.
That's fantastic. And what's, I guess, an underrated skill that every legal professional should develop?
Meaningful communication.
Mm. And the best piece of advice that you ever received from either another lawyer or a business professional?
Mm, I'd say it's pretty simple. Just be yourself.
Mm. Good. What still excites you about, the legal profession, and, gets you up in the morning and you think, I'm going to make a difference today?
I mean, definitely the in-house legal profession, it's constantly the unknown. It's constantly a challenge, and you genuinely never know what the day is going to bring.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. It's been very
Thank
insightful, and
you.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're
Really nice to
welcome.
chat.
And if anyone wants to reach out to Alison, feel free. I'll put her LinkedIn profile in all the videos, so you can reach out to her and build relationships. Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much for your time again, and I'm going to stop the podcast there. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.